Hi everyone, let's talk about cameras. It's an important topic and I didn't mention it in previous videos. This should be a short one, but I want to get you up to speed on how to use cameras in Maya with Arnold. All right, so the geometry that we've been using in previous tutorials is here. The only difference is that I have changed the shader assigned to it. It's still a standard surface shader, but the preset has been changed from plastic to car paint, and that's so I can use GPU rendering. The car paint shader does not use subsurface scattering, and that seems to break the GPU rendering, and GPU rendering is a lot faster and helpful for this video. So just playing with the color and the weight here to get these pink reflections. And let's dig into cameras. So by default, we have our perspective camera. You can see here in the modeling viewport that this is perspective. We can actually look at the classic quad view by hitting the space bar. And this of course works better if we've got the general up. And yes, so if you start hitting the space bar, you're going to see these different views. That can be helpful. But when we're working in perspective, we're typically working with the perspective camera, which is one of the default cameras that we see when we go into those quad views. Let me go back to the rendering setup here and switch back to the perspective view. And of course, when I have the rendering going over here, I am getting a live link between the perspective view here and what's happening in the rendering window, which is great. But let's say I want to change something in my scene and I don't want to lose this view. There are a couple of options. Or perhaps I want a camera with a different lens setting. I'm going to show you how to do that. So first let's start with just making a bookmark. So bookmarks are handy, and we can do this with the perspective camera. So under view, bookmarks, and then let's say I really like this view and I don't want to lose it. I can call this view 1 and then apply, close, and now when we go back to view bookmarks, we should have this saved. And so this is very handy because now I could come and look for different views of my object and save these, and then when I want to go back to one, or maybe I make some edits to the object, and I can go back and just pop into this bookmark. So that's really handy. And we might then also want to make a second or third or fourth, or as many cameras as you need to render out the object. And to do this, we need to make new cameras. And we can do that under Create, Camera. And maybe we want this camera to be more like a parallel view. So we're going to call this Cam Parallel. Like that. Okay. And so what you'll see by default is there's a new little camera icon here, and we could move it around here, but that's not going to be the most intuitive way to do it. So what we want to do is deselect that camera and then go to Panels, Perspective, and look through our new camera, Cam Parallel. Okay, and now we're not seeing anything, but let's hit F. That focuses on the entire scene, including the shader ball. Now I'm just going to select my objects in the center there, hit F, and that's focusing on our objects. But what we're going to see here is that this, even though we're still live rendering, we're not seeing the updates here. So we actually need to tell the Arnold render view to use our new camera, and we could do that under Render, Camera, and then we can change this to Camera Shape 1. And it's saying error, there is no camera. So did I delete this? Cam Parallel, Cam Parallel, Cam Parallel Shape. Let's see how we fix this. Let's try. Yep, it's not there. So let's stop our progressive render and see if it's, yep, now it's saying Cam Parallel Shape. We could switch over to that and restart our render, and now we see this live link, rather, so that we're getting this update. And this is a cool view. So maybe I want to say, hey, this is a great view. So I'm going to bookmark it, edit, bookmark. Can we call it view 1? We could try, apply, close, and now let's see, bookmarks. Oh, we called it view 2, and that's because you already had a view 1, and very often you can't have things with the same name in Maya, so we'll call this one view 2. So this is fine. I guess what we would really want to do here with the bookmarks is we could call this, you know, camera 2 view 1 or something, C2 view 1 or something like that. And this one we could delete, and then C2 view 1, apply, and close, and now we can keep them straight now that we have 2 cameras. So this is great. We can keep going around, and then as we find views that we like, we could save them, or we could just pop back into the views that we've had before. So that's nice. And so what if we, like, say, really like this view, but want to make some changes to our object? And we want to zoom around, and we don't want things to constantly be updating over here. It is possible, now that we have our camera parallel shape selected here, we can, in the modeling window, pop back over to perspective and look through our perspective camera. And now as we zoom around here, we're not losing this view. And this gives us the option of saying, hey, this is a great view, but maybe it would be more dynamic if we started like rotating this object a little bit, something like that. And, you know, changing its position, maybe that would be interesting. So we can do that here, and, you know, we could look at it from different angles and move it up and down, and we're not actually changing our view here, just getting the update. So and then if we were happy with these changes, we could come back to our cam parallel. So view, let's see, actually we need to go back here, panels, perspective, panels, perspective, cam parallel, and now we're matching that view. Okay, one thing here though, we haven't actually made this camera more parallel or flatter. So how do we do that? Let's select our cam parallel, and let's look at the options here. So we have just the transform node, so this shows the position of the camera, a rotation. It's in the shape node where we're going to change the focal length. And so if we want this to be a more flat parallel-like camera, we can make this a very high number. So I'm going to move this to 400. And then, of course, I need to hit the F key on the keyboard, and that's going to zoom me out. And let's look again at our cam parallel shape, and we have this very, very small view angle and a very high focal length, which makes everything much flatter. So let me go ahead and refocus on these objects, and now I should be pivoting around them. And this is now a much flatter, more orthographic view of our objects. We're not seeing the resolution gate here, so I want to make sure that's active. So view, because we made a new camera, we lost that resolution gate. And what I'm talking about is a little box that shows me in the modeling view exactly what I'm seeing in the rendering. So we can go to view and camera settings and change this to resolution gate, and now that will help me frame my objects. So I can come in here and really zoom in, and this is going to be much more flat. We're not going to get like such, we're not going to get a lot of perspectival distortion. Let's see, we might even be able to see that better if we turn on our backdrop, and let's look at that. And we're not, do we see the backdrop? This is this is interesting. So I've turned the backdrop on, it's not showing up here. When you have something like that happening, we can simply go to render and update full scene. And that should, let's hope, pop the backdrop in. Oh, yep, now the backdrop is in, great. And now you can, this gives us a better sense of the less perspective distortion. that we're getting in this view, right? It's looking much more like a kind of model, or and you know, we might even be able to see this better if we popped in just a cube, right? Make it a little bigger here. Okay, great. Yeah, since this thing is so angled, it's kind of hard to tell, but you know, we're not getting a lot of distortion on this, and so this side is pretty parallel to this side. What would the alternative be? The alternative would be, if we go back to our camera parallel and made it really zoomy, we could take its angle of view to, so by default 35 is the setting, and that's fairly standard. A 35mm lens fit, you know, and now what we'll see with this is we're getting this third vanishing point starting to emerge with this cube, and you know, as we kind of go above and below it, these lines will start to converge. So we can exaggerate that further by going back to the angle of view, and if we start making this really low here, let's see here, I wasn't updating in real time, but our angle of view, oh, you know, it's actually doing the opposite. In Rhino, you take this smaller, in Rhino, you take it higher. So that's interesting. The angle of view needs to be larger. So let's take this up to, say, 100. That makes sense. The field of view. The field of view needs to get larger. Okay, so I was wrong. Now we can see that more, the perspectival distortion here. So sorry about that. And can parallel. So as you take this higher, you're getting more distortion. And so if you want to, let's see, fit here and like get a lot of perspectival distortion, make this more spatial, you can take the camera angle of view high and the focal length low, and then if you want it to be more like a parallel view, you can raise this up to, say, 400. Take the angle of view low, the focal length high, and oops, zoom in on this. Actually, I have a bookmark, so let's get back to our bookmark. And now we have this parallel view. And we could choose to have the background on or off. Here's another cool tip, which will show you just how flexible Maya is. We can, in Arnold, tell this to, in the Arnold settings for this object, to have the backdrop not be visible. We get this shadow here, and actually, if we turn the backdrop off, I'm just going to hide it, you can see that our object's much brighter. We're getting more reflections because the shiny things have access to the full HDRI image. But maybe we don't want to see the backdrop, but we actually like the what it does to the lighting of this object. So how do we make it invisible to the camera? We can go to the backdrop shape, go to Arnold, and we can turn off primary visibility. Okay, cool. So now the lighting is the same on object, but the backdrop is not visible. Let me just make a bookmark here. So I should show you here that we can, with this little camera, store a snapshot. So we have this one, and zoom out. Let's look and see what happens if we turn off the backdrop here, and we should see a difference in the object. And let's also go ahead and update the full scene just to make sure that the rendering understands the backdrop is now not visible. Okay, yeah, and so now I see a difference. It's much brighter because and the reflections are different because the backdrop is not being shown. Or is not in the scene at all. So there's the difference. So with this one, we've hidden the backdrop from the camera, but we're still getting the effects of what it does to the shading. In this one, the backdrop is completely turned off. And so just be careful if you use this and let's say we turn the backdrop back on, we update the full scene, but we're not seeing the backdrop. Why don't we see the backdrop? Just be aware that we could have turned off the primary visibility and we need to toggle it back on to actually see that. All right, so that covers cameras. You can have as many cameras as you want, and you can have either your camera linked to the live rendering, or you can choose to look through a different camera and modify your objects and have your rendering be in the same position over here because you're looking through a different camera specified in the render view. All right, thanks for watching. Hope this was helpful.